The silver Aston Martin Valkyrie AMR Pro glided into Lagos Auto Works with the silent prestige of a multi-million-dollar vehicle. Adana Chaik emerged, her bespoke suit a stark contrast to the garage's oil-splattered concrete. A trio of senior technicians circled the hybrid V12, their expressions defeated. None of them would risk touching the complex ECU without factory authorization. Just then, a man in coveralls, tall and reserved with tousled brown hair and hands marked by honest labor, came forward. Obina Okoye had just been hired that morning. Adana arched a skeptical eyebrow as the owner explained that this was their newest mechanic, a widower raising his young daughter on his own. Adana's laugh was as sharp and cold as polished steel. "If you can fix this engine, I'll marry you," she declared, the words a blend of jest and derision. The other mechanics chuckled, but Obina only offered a quiet smile. There was a time when Adana Chaiki had believed in love with the unshakable faith of a child in a fairy tale. She was 28 when she married Segun Falana, the scion of a shipping dynasty, certain their union would be more enduring than any business merger. For 3 years, she dedicated herself to their shared vision, expanding her family's logistics company while planning for children in their sprawling Lekki mansion. She poured herself into 16-hour workdays to prove her value to the Falana name, sacrificing dinners and getaways with the promise that their success would eventually afford them time for each other. The betrayal arrived on a Tuesday evening in March. Adana had come home early from a business trip, eager to surprise Segun with a bottle of his favorite wine and an itinerary for a long-awaited holiday. She found him instead in their marital bed with her personal assistant, Ifunanya Dike, the one person she had entrusted with her schedule, her confidences, and the intricate details of her professional life. The image seared itself into her mind, Segun's stunned expression, Ifunanya's panicked rush for her clothes, and the disheveled sheets Adana had chosen on their honeymoon. The ensuing divorce was a brutal public spectacle. Segun's attorneys portrayed Adana as a frigid, career-driven woman who had let her marriage wither. The press eagerly branded her the Ice Queen CEO, a moniker that clung to her in boardrooms and at charity functions. After the settlement, Adana plunged into cheeky logistics with the relentless drive of someone with nothing left to lose. She acquired 3 rival firms, pushed into global shipping lanes, and cultivated a reputation for ruthless precision. Her success was staggering, but it came at a steep price. She abandoned dating, constructing impenetrable walls around her heart, and became known as a brilliant but impossibly demanding leader. Her employees whispered that her gaze could chill a room, that she never laughed with genuine warmth, and that she treated potential suitors like hostile takeover bids. Meanwhile, Obina Okoye's life had taken a different path, one defined by the quiet hum of aerospace facilities and the sterile corridors of hospitals. He had been the most gifted aeronautical engineer in his division at a top firm, a mind capable of identifying problems others failed to even see. His peers admired his uncanny ability to perceive the intricate patterns within complex systems, to grasp how thousands of individual parts could synchronize to create something magnificent. Obina had married his university sweetheart, a pediatric nurse with a gentle touch and boundless compassion. Their life was planned with the meticulousness of an engineering schematic: career growth, a home in a quiet suburb, and children who would be enveloped in security and love. But his wife passed away just 3 months after their daughter Zara was born, her body succumbing to a rare complication. As Obina cradled his newborn daughter in the same hospital room where his wife had just died, his world imploded into a singularity of grief and immense responsibility. The abstract engineering puzzles that once captivated him now felt trivial next to the profound challenge of keeping a tiny human alive and thriving. He took an extended leave from work before resigning completely, exchanging a stellar career for any job that would allow him to be a constant presence in his daughter's life. Adana Chaik had once trusted in love like a child trusts in magic. Obina Okoye had once trusted in plans like an engineer trusts in physics. Life had taught them both that such certainties were fragile. That evening, long after the garage had emptied and the echoes of laughter had subsided, Obina remained with the Valkyrie. He had felt the sting of Adana Chaik's mockery and seen the dismissive glance she'd given him, another blue-collar worker beneath her notice. Yet Obina had also perceived something more, a magnificent machine that no one could repair, and a woman whose expensive automobile was a monument to her own isolation. He approached the engine not with a bruised ego, but with professional curiosity. The Aston Martin's hybrid system was a marvel of engineering, wedding a V12 combustion engine to electric motors via a sophisticated energy recovery network. The sheer volume of sensors, actuators, and control modules would have intimidated most mechanics. Obina saw it differently. Any system, regardless of its complexity, was merely an assembly of individual parts needing to communicate. The fault was almost always in the communication, not the components. He began tracing electrical pathways with the patience of a man who once designed flight navigation systems, checking voltages and signal clarity with tools that felt rudimentary compared to his old aerospace equipment. The dashboard displays indicated all major systems were normal, yet the engine management computer was registering a nonsensical combination of fault codes. For 2 hours, Obina meticulously inspected every connection, every ground wire, every strand carrying data between the engine and its electronic brain. The issue, when he finally uncovered it, was breathtakingly simple. A voltage converter buried deep within the hybrid architecture had been installed with a faulty ground connection. The mistake was so minor it hadn't triggered a clear warning light, but it generated enough electrical interference to confuse the management system into shutting down the powertrain. It was an error anyone could have made, but discovering it required the discipline to check every single connection instead of relying on diagnostic software. Obina executed the repair with practiced precision, testing each step to prevent creating new issues. He cleared the fault codes, initiated the engine's startup sequence, and listened to the harmonious hum of perfectly tuned machinery. The Valkyrie ran more smoothly than it had since it left the factory, but Obina didn't alert anyone to his triumph. He simply put away his tools, washed his hands, and went home to his sleeping daughter. When Adana arrived the next morning, braced for another day of delays and excuses, the Aston Martin roared to life at the first touch. The instrument panel glowed with optimal performance readings. She stared at the gauges, genuinely startled, then scanned the garage for an answer. "Who fixed this?" she demanded, her voice edged with a new note of curiosity. The garage owner started to gesture toward Obina, but Obina met his gaze and gave a slight shake of his head. He continued cleaning his hands with focused care, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Adana found herself watching him, intrigued by the economy of his movements and the quiet assurance with which he handled his tools. For the first time in many years, Adana Chaik felt a genuine curiosity about another person. 2 weeks later, Adana found herself back at Lagos Auto Works during her lunch hour, using the flimsy pretext of a minor, likely non-existent, electrical issue. She found Obina in a quiet corner of the shop with a 7-year-old girl curled against him, her head resting on his lap as she slept. The child was petite, with delicate features, and skin so fair it seemed almost translucent in the afternoon sun slanting through the garage windows. "My daughter Zara," Obina explained softly, careful not to disturb her. "School let out early and my babysitter had an emergency." Zara stirred at the sound of their voices, her eyes a startling shade of blue against her pale skin, opening to gaze at Adana. She took in the expensive suit and immaculate hair with a child's open wonder, free of judgment. "I had a dream about you," Zara said to Adana, her voice quiet but distinct. "You were a princess. But your castle was empty, so you were sad." A strange sensation bloomed in Adana's chest, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She knelt to meet Zara's gaze, studying the girl's face with a dawning unease. There was a fragility about Zara that was more than just her small frame, a quality that stirred painful memories of Adana's younger brother, who had passed away from a congenital heart defect when she was 22. "She has a heart condition," Obina said, his voice low, answering the question Adana hadn't dared to ask. "Congenital cardiomyopathy. We manage it with medication and frequent checkups, but she tires very easily." Adana watched as Obina gently placed his fingers on Zara's wrist, checking her pulse with the ingrained habit of a parent who monitors vital signs as casually as telling time. The gesture was so tender, so full of protective love, that Adana felt the burn of unshed tears for the first time in years. She had built her life on the principle that emotional vulnerability was an unaffordable luxury. But seeing this reserved man care for his delicate daughter reawakened something she thought had perished with her own dreams of a family. "The doctors say she may need surgery one day," Obina continued, his tone steady but his eyes revealing a profound worry. "A transplant, if the medicine isn't enough. For now, we take it one day at a time." Zara looked from her father to Adana, sensing the gravity of their conversation, even if she didn't grasp the medical terms. "Daddy takes very good care of me," she told Adana with complete faith. "He knows how to fix anything that's broken." Adana spent the rest of her lunch hour talking with Zara about school, favorite books, and the fantasy worlds she drew where everyone was healthy and strong. When she had to leave, she felt a strange reluctance to go back to the sterile precision of her office, to the endless cycle of meetings and strategic plans that had once felt so vital. Over the next few weeks, Adana fell into a routine of visiting the garage at lunchtime, always armed with a plausible excuse about her car. She brought coffee for Obina and treats for Zara, pretending she'd overpurchased and didn't want them to go to waste. These small deceptions seemed necessary, a shield against having to analyze too deeply why she was so drawn to this quiet corner of her meticulously managed world. Their conversations drifted from the technicalities of hybrid engines to more personal reflections on resilience. Obina never lamented his circumstances or showed any bitterness about the career he'd left behind. He spoke instead of finding purpose in small triumphs. A good day for Zara at school, a particularly difficult repair job well done, the fulfillment of work that demanded both intellect and skill. "Don't you ever miss being an aeronautical engineer?" Adana asked one afternoon as they shared sandwiches while Zara played nearby. Obina considered the question with his usual thoughtfulness. "I miss the intellectual puzzles sometimes," he conceded, "but I've come to realize there are different kinds of problems worth solving." Keeping Zara healthy and happy feels more significant than designing navigation systems for aircraft I might never see fly. Adana found herself opening up about her own life in a way she hadn't with anyone for years. She spoke of the weight of running a family company, the profound loneliness that came with success, and how her failed marriage had taught her to place her faith in contracts and numbers rather than emotions and promises. Obina listened without passing judgment, offering insightful questions that helped Adana see herself more clearly. "You speak of your business as if it's a fortress," he noted one day, "something to shield you from the world." "Maybe it is," Adana countered. "Maybe that's what I need. Or maybe," Obina suggested gently. It's become a prison, and you're the only one holding the key. The conversation that shifted everything occurred on a rainy Thursday in late October. Adana arrived at the garage to find Obina studying a spark plug under a magnifying glass, turning it slowly to inspect its condition. She observed him for a few moments before speaking. You treat every problem like a puzzle to be solved, she said. Even the smallest parts receive your complete focus. Obina looked up, his gaze meeting hers. I learned a long time ago that small things can lead to catastrophic failures, he replied. In aerospace, a tiny defect can bring down a plane. In a relationship, a small misunderstanding that isn't addressed can erode years of trust. With Zara's heart, a missed dose of medicine or an overlooked symptom could be fatal. So, yes, I pay attention to the details. Adana felt the weight of his words settle deep within her. She had spent years obsessed with grand strategies and major acquisitions, all while ignoring the subtle cues that might have saved her marriage or helped her forge real connections. Her success was built on the premise that bigger was better, that more control meant more safety, that emotional detachment was a sign of strength. What if you're wrong? She asked softly. What if focusing on the small things just means you spend your life worrying about everything falling apart? Obina smiled, a rare expression that transformed his serious features. Then at least when things do fall apart, he said, you know you did everything in your power to stop it. And sometimes, if you're paying close enough attention, you can fix problems before they become disasters. The media frenzy ignited with a single photograph by Kunle Adebayo, an automotive blogger who chronicled the lives of wealthy car aficionados. He was documenting the culture of high-end repair shops when he saw Adana Chaik, one of the country's most prominent CEOs, perched on a workbench at Lagos Auto Works, sharing what looked like an intimate lunch with a man in coveralls. The image itself was harmless, Adana laughing at something Obina had said, while Zara played with toy cars at their feet, all three bathed in the warm afternoon light. But the caption Kunle chose turned the innocent moment into social media dynamite. Ice Queen CEO melts for blue-collar Romeo? Adana Chaik's secret garage romance. Within a day, the photo had been shared thousands of times. Business journalists began dissecting Adana's personal life with ravenous excitement. The stark contrast between her reputation as a formidable corporate titan and the apparent warmth in the photo created a narrative perfectly engineered for viral spread. The story exploded when a former employee of Cheek Logistics anonymously leaked details of Adana's divorce and her subsequent isolation. Suddenly, every business journal wanted to explore the human side of the woman who had seemed emotionally invincible. Photographers started staking out Lagos Auto Works, hungry for more pictures of the improbable pair. Adana's board of directors convened an emergency meeting. The same men and women who had championed her aggressive business tactics were now deeply uneasy about her private life becoming a public spectacle. The board chairman, Emeka Nwosu, a 70-year-old traditionalist who had always been wary of Adana's leadership, spearheaded the call for damage control. This sort of publicity damages our corporate image, Nwosu declared. Our clients and investors expect a certain standard of professionalism. Dating a mechanic implies poor judgment. Adana felt the familiar cold sting of betrayal, the same feeling that had consumed her during her divorce. The very people who profited from her hard-won success were now scrutinizing her personal life as if it were a quarterly report. She saw that her meticulously crafted professional persona had become yet another cage, one where even a glimpse of personal happiness was viewed as a liability to shareholder value. The pressure mounted when Cheeky Logistics' stock price took a small hit. Financial analysts speculated that investors were worried Adana was distracted, Several major clients called for reassurances that her personal affairs would not compromise her professional duties. The whispers in boardrooms and at industry events painted her as a woman who had lost her edge, who had let emotion cloud her legendary business sense. Adana faced an impossible dilemma: defend her right to a private life or protect the empire she had spent years building. The choice felt like a battle between two versions of herself: the triumphant CEO who had sacrificed everything for her career, and the woman who had just begun to rediscover the possibility of a genuine human bond. The press conference was set for Friday morning at the Cheeky Logistics headquarters. Adana stood at the podium in her most commanding suit, staring into the cameras with the icy confidence that had made her a legend. The reporters anticipated either a tearful confession or a vehement denial, anything to fuel the next news cycle. Instead, Adana delivered a masterclass in corporate crisis management. "The recent media focus on my personal life is based on speculation and misinterpretation," she stated, her voice devoid of any emotion. "I am not in a romantic relationship with any employee of Lagos Auto Works." The photographs captured a business-related discussion about automotive engineering, nothing more. "I would ask that the media redirect its attention to Cheeky Logistics' record-breaking quarterly earnings rather than fabricating stories about my private life." Obina watched the press conference from the garage's small office, with Zara asleep in his lap after a tiring day. He saw the familiar mask descend over Adana's features as she transformed back into the untouchable CEO who had first mocked him. He felt no anger at her words, only a profound sadness for the woman who had briefly allowed herself to be seen, only to retreat behind corporate armor to defend what she believed mattered most. The following morning, Obina tendered his resignation at Lagos Auto Works without any drama or explanation. He left no forwarding address and no message for Adana. He simply gathered his tools, kissed Zara goodbye as she left for school, and vanished from Adana's carefully structured world as quietly as he had entered it. Adana returned to the garage 3 days later, half expecting to find Obina at his usual post. She found only an empty space where his toolbox had been, and the faint, lingering smell of engine oil and hard work. The owner explained Obina's departure with sincere regret, noting he had been the best mechanic they'd ever had. For the first time since her divorce, Adana Chaik felt utterly alone. Her stock price had stabilized, the media had moved on, and her board commended her for her deft handling of the situation. She had successfully defended her professional standing and preserved her image. But her victory felt hollow, measured against the silence left by Obina's quiet presence and Zara's innocent laugh. Adana threw herself back into her work with a frantic energy, staying late to pore over reports and plans that now felt meaningless. She attended meetings where colleagues congratulated her on weathering the storm, their praise feeling like cheap trophies for a game she no longer wanted to play. 3 weeks after Obina left, a phone call changed everything. The voice on the other end was Dr. Halima Yusuf, a pediatric cardiologist, informing Adana that Zara Okoye had been admitted for emergency surgery. Obina had listed Adana as an emergency contact, a fact that surprised them both. "Her condition has worsened rapidly," Dr. Yusuf explained. "She needs an immediate valve replacement, but we're facing complications with insurance. Her father is trying to manage it all alone, and frankly, he's under immense stress." Adana drove to the hospital without a second thought for her public image. She found Obina in the cardiac ICU waiting area, collapsed in a plastic chair with his head in his hands, looking more depleted than she had ever seen him. Technical drawings were scattered around him, sketches of a mechanical heart valve he had apparently been designing during the agonizing wait. When Obina looked up and saw her, his expression was not one of surprise, but of gratitude mingled with the deep weariness of a parent living a nightmare. Adana sat beside him, offering her silent presence as the only comfort she could. They waited together in the sterile hallway, two people who had built fortresses around their hearts, now united by their love for a little girl who had shown them both what unconditional love looked like. "I should have stayed in aerospace engineering," Obina murmured, more to himself than to her. "The insurance would have been better. The pay. Maybe I could have afforded better care. Maybe we could have caught this earlier." Adana took his hand, feeling the calluses of honest work and the slight tremor of fear. "You gave her something more precious than money," she said. "You gave her a father who was there every single day, who knew her well enough to see when something was wrong, who loved her enough to set aside his own ambitions for her." The surgery took 6 hours. During that time, Adana quietly arranged for the hospital's top pediatric cardiac surgeon to join the team, guaranteed that any experimental treatments would be covered, and set up a trust to secure Zara's future medical needs. She did it all without telling Obina, without seeking thanks, simply because it was the right thing to do for the child who had reminded her that dreams were real. When Dr. Yusuf emerged from the operating room with news that the surgery was a success, Obina sobbed with relief. Adana held his shoulders, feeling her own tears fall freely for the first time in years. Zara would make a full recovery, the surgeon said, though she would require lifelong monitoring. That night, as Zara slept soundly in her hospital bed, her heartbeat steady and strong on the monitors, Adana and Obina talked about second chances. They spoke of the courage it takes to rebuild a life from its broken parts. Neither mentioned the media storm that had torn them apart, focusing instead on a future they might build together if they were brave enough. "I'm not the person who made that joke in the garage," Adana said as dawn broke. "That woman was terrified of everything that truly matters. I don't want to be afraid anymore." Obina looked at her, his eyes filled not with judgment, but with empathy. "We're all afraid of something," he said. "The question is whether we let fear make our choices, or if we choose to act in spite of it." Adana realized she had spent years defining herself by professional triumphs that felt empty compared to the simple act of keeping vigil by a child's bedside. Success without connection was just a more decorated form of loneliness. All the money in the world could not buy the sense of purpose she had found in caring for Obina and Zara. 6 months after Zara's surgery, Adana Chaiki made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the business community. She was stepping down as CEO of Chaik Logistics to focus on vocational education and small business development. The move cost her a fortune in stock options and bonuses, but it granted her something she had never truly had: the freedom to live by her own values instead of others' expectations. Adana and Obina opened Phoenix Garage together, a unique blend of an auto repair shop and a technical training center in a converted warehouse. Their mission was straightforward but radical: to provide top-tier automotive training to people society had written off: ex-convicts, school dropouts, and anyone else needing a fresh start. Obina developed the curriculum while Adana managed the business and community partnerships. They hired instructors who possessed both technical mastery and a deep compassion for their students, fostering an environment of mentorship over criticism. The garage soon earned a reputation for exceptional work and fair pricing, and the training program began producing skilled technicians who found successful careers. Adana discovered a greater joy in teaching business basics to eager learners than she ever had in dazzling a boardroom with quarterly forecasts. She found profound satisfaction in seeing people rebuild their lives through honest work and skilled trades. The transition wasn't seamless. Adana had to learn to work with her hands, to diagnose engine troubles by sound and feel, and to connect with students from backgrounds vastly different from her own. But every challenge taught her about resilience, the dignity of labor, and the strength that comes from empowering others. Obina watched her transformation in quiet awe. The woman who had once scoffed at his blue-collar job now dedicated her days to teaching young people to take pride in technical skills. She had exchanged her designer suits for practical work clothes, her corner office for a classroom that smelled of motor oil and hope. Zara blossomed in the world they had built. Her heart still required monitoring, but she grew stronger as she watched the two most important people in her life create something meaningful from broken pieces. She became the unofficial mascot of Phoenix Garage, charming everyone with her bright spirit and reminding them that love could mend more than just engines. 1 year after opening Phoenix Garage, Adana decided it was time to publicly affirm what was already clear to everyone who knew them. The occasion was their first anniversary celebration, a gathering of students, customers, and friends. Adana took the microphone, clutching a small, wrapped object. The room hushed as she unwrapped an old spark plug from her Aston Martin Valkyrie, now polished to a brilliant shine and mounted on a wooden plaque. "A year ago," Adana began, her voice steady but thick with emotion, "I made a joke to a man I had just met. I said that if he could fix my engine, I would marry him. I thought I was being witty, maybe a little cruel." She turned to Obina, who sat with Zara at the head table, both watching her with love. "What I didn't realize then," Adana continued, "was that he didn't just fix my car. He fixed something inside me that I didn't even know was broken. He taught me that true strength isn't about control or building walls. It's about showing up day after day for the people you love." Adana walked to Obina's table and held out the spark plug. "So, I'm not joking this time. You fixed my engine, Obina Okoye. You fixed my heart. And you fixed my belief that two broken people can build something beautiful together." Obina stood to accept the gift, his own eyes glistening. From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring Zara had helped design, a simple silver band inlaid with tiny gears and springs, a piece of jewelry crafted by someone who understood that the most beautiful things are often the most functional. "I love you, Adana Cheek," Obina said, his voice clear and strong. "I love your mind, your drive, your capacity to change, and your willingness to get your hands dirty for what you care about. I love how you've taught me it's possible to dream again." The proposal was witnessed by 200 people who had found hope at Phoenix Garage, a community that understood the power of second chances. When Adana said yes, the room erupted in a joyous celebration, a testament to the fact that the best love stories often begin when someone is brave enough to fix what seems beyond repair. 2 years later, the Chike Okoye family lived in a comfortable home a short walk from Phoenix Garage, their lives shaped by work, school, and the quiet joy of building something that would last. The Aston Martin Valkyrie sat in their driveway, bearing a small decal that read, "Fixed with Love," a reminder of the joke that became a promise, and the promise that became a life. Adana found happiness in small victories, a student mastering a complex repair, a daughter growing stronger each day. Obina discovered that engineering could be applied to human problems with just as much satisfaction as to machines. Zara, now 9 and healthy, was the bridge between their two worlds, equally at home discussing business strategy with Adana or engine diagnostics with Obina. She had learned from them both that love was not something that simply happened, but something you practiced every day. On quiet Sunday mornings, Harper would sometimes sit in the Valkyrie and reflect on the woman she once was. Successful, yet isolated, powerful, yet unable to forge the connections that give life meaning. The transformation had cost her millions, but it had given her something priceless, a family built on respect, shared purpose, and the daily choice to mend what was broken. The spark plug that started it all rested on their mantelpiece, a symbol of the truth that the smallest components can power the most profound changes. Adana Chiki had learned that engines were not the only things that could be fixed with patience, skill, and love. Sometimes, a broken heart just needs the right mechanic, someone willing to trace every connection until they find the source of the problem and patient enough to make a repair that will last a lifetime.